I'm going to do a 30 days of mindfulness reprise. I started this a little while ago. If anyone ever caught those videos of starting down this path of documenting 30 days of taking a few minutes each day to be really consciously mindful outside of sitting meditation kind of thing, but just as you move through your day. And in classic form, call it ADHD, and that's probably true, but a lot of people will relate to, I just kind of fell off the wagon on it. And it's really unfortunate because a lot of cool things were happening. Went to New Orleans and Cuba for one, and so how cool would that have been to have some videos from those trips? But here we are, and in the tradition of true meditation, I'm going to bring it back. And the side reference to that, for those who aren't aware, is so many people think that meditation is about quieting your mind and stopping your thinking, which is newsflash, impossible. Your brain is built to keep going and keep mulling and keep processing, and that's the nature of it. And so really meditation is not making it silent. It is about acknowledging and recognizing, oh, there I go again, there's another thought, bring it gently back and start again. And you can do it 1,000 times in a minute, 1,000 times in 10 minutes, and that you're meditating. You're conscious of what's happening and conscious of your monkey mind and all the thoughts running around, and it's a little bit of a crazy place once you really see all the chaos happening. But that's what mindfulness is all about, is awareness of where you're at in a moment. And it's a kind of odd day to start today because I've been thinking about it, and then just a couple hours ago I got a really disturbing, sad, tragic, stressful text from an extremely close family member of mine, in some of the parlance of the day, a little bit unhinged. It's hard to explain in short form, but those who might relate, this person has some addictions and some other trauma-based responses and challenges with coping that lead to the simplest way to put it is a sort of victimhood and martyrdom. And I should say something as simple as, we reserved a family vacation spot a month or so ago and have other people coming in, so it's not just us. And turns out she wanted that weekend and hadn't thought to ask, and now asked, and it's like, well, we got it a month ago, but that's okay. There's other weekends, and no, that's not okay. And so I got to hear about a lot of projection and defense that had nothing to do with the weekend, and really hurtful, ugly, extreme stuff. But unfortunately, the family's been dealing with this for quite a while, and I have been the object of some of the, blame game, and we all have roles in our relationships. But I think, just go with me when I say, it's the kind of thing where everybody else is why things are terrible or frustrating or whatever, and there's no self-centeredness. And I have a ton of empathy, and there's a discussion on a whole Buddhist principle of compassion. Even if somebody is wronging you, you can have compassion for that, and it doesn't mean you have to accept the behavior or be okay or everything's going to be great, you're best buddies and you go out. It's acknowledging that people have their space and their reasons. And so it's kind of an interesting play, because today, this last couple hours, has been one of the more challenging opportunities to exercise mindfulness, because of course the emotion went with that. I had the whole physical, I've had my own heightened stress and anxiety level all on my own, with a lot of the things happening, including our bigger political picture. It's April 2025 in America, and those going through it or know about it have some context for the just sort of existential change and stress and anxiety of our, I don't even think you can call it a political situation anymore. It's technically politics, but it's a lot deeper than that. So, and the division in our country that really led to it. You can't blame any one person. If one person, you got out of office, there's a reason they're there. They got voted in. There's a reason they're getting away with certain things. And that brings you to a just massive social division. I think pretty much anyone can acknowledge is happening, probably in the world, from what I hear, but certainly in the American context. A lot of so-called othering, dehumanizing of other sides, polarization, people getting super set. And so you're taking things past logic. These aren't circumstances. People are identifying with a belief or a belief that they held and clinging to that. And so it's not about conversation or rational discussion. And I mention that because I've been, embracing some of the talks about that kind of thing lately a lot, as I think a lot of us have. And naturally, the podcasts I listen to that focus on meditation, I call out 10% Happier all the time because I love it. I think it's a great program. Dan Harris does these great interviews, and a lot of focus has been how to give people the tools to work with what we have right now. And so much of that is letting it go. There's acceptance of what is. Again, go with the Buddhist concept. Doesn't mean, it's okay, but okay, this is where we're at. The example is that somebody I just heard this morning was, think of a fire or a tornado. You can't really be angry at the fire or tornado because they're just being what they are. And in some ways that's true for other people too. And the bigger point for you is you can be angry, but that does not serve you. The anger, if anything, limits sometimes greatly your ability to cope with it, to respond intelligently to it, to protect yourself, to maintain your own sanity, centeredness, whatever. I mean, there's so many words that you could use, but so there's a big concepts coming into play, acceptance of what is. You can put aside the emotion of it and then focus on action. What can I do? How can I step up? What can I do from this space? Compassion, acknowledging that even maybe especially the worst of people, or the people that are acting in their worst ways, have their reasons that they got to that space as well. And it again does not mean that you're okay with it, or that you don't have your boundaries, or you don't say no. Like in this case, to be honest, if it was just about us, we'd probably back out of this little weekend vacation on a holiday just to avoid the conflict, because that's who I am, that's who my partner is. Him and I both share we'd rather live a little more peaceably, and if you can avoid conflict, then that's good. But there is a point where avoidance is not the healthy choice. And in this case, we have other people that kind of help us step forward and say, no, this isn't okay. This is a very ordinary, common thing. It's just like making a reservation at a hotel. Whoever has it first does, and there was this attitude of, well, we're going to go anyway, and you'll just have to work around it. It's like, well, if that were even possible before, it sure is not now, because now there's no way to go into that kind of drama, much less bring somebody else in. My partner's daughter's coming into town from across the country, already has a ticket booked. This was all built around a weekend that we had plans, but I shouldn't have to justify it. And the big point is, it doesn't matter. Logic, just say from the text that I got and the conversations had, hark back to a long pattern in history. And like a lot of our politics right now, logic has nothing to do with it. This is coming from an internal emotional place. You see things coming out that just are not true, and it's so easy to want to go, wait, but I mean, every sentence in this is like, but that's not what happened, and that's not at all true. Every single one. And there's a lot of projection. Oh, it's this fault, or this person's fault, or a lot of name calling and a lot of very hostile language. And again, as talking about it, it's sadly reflective, I think, of our bigger society. Some of this is really unsurprising in the context of somebody with addiction and the reasons there's addiction issues, self-esteem, and all kinds of things. And I don't know what to say about where it's coming from in society, but maybe there is just a general self-esteem issue there too. A lack of direction, a lack of knowing who we are as people, as a country. I don't know. That's not what we're here to talk about now, but it's loosening your grip on that and wanting to grab a hold of it. I am definitely in that category. I like to grab a hold of something and make it right now. And doing it right now is not always possible or best. And two, sometimes it won't happen at all. It's, again, not about logic. I mean, there's some things that came out in this and accusations that there'd been big discussions before, and a lot of people going, that's not how this went down. And you made choices that now you're not happy with, but these comments are coming up again. So you can see that, and I really reminds me of the frustration I'm having with a lot of the conversation, or when you're looking at what's happening in our country and between people, and a lot of the frustration I have, and some of that's the intellectual part. Some people say it's an ADHD thing. I don't know. I know it's definitely a me thing. Illogical stuff just drives me crazy, because I'm like, wait, but that's not accurate. There's objective facts here that are not what you're saying they are. And I just read the other day that ADHD people as a trait have sort of a really strong sense of justice, and I found that super interesting. And I've not delved into it to know how legit or established that is as a tie to the personality or the brain type, but I have it, that's for sure. It's, maybe some people say, oh, it's because you're a lawyer. Well, chicken and the egg, right? I mean, I've always had a strong sense of what's right, and I know I have some friends who I appreciate the perspective. They think I'm always arguing, and it's really not trying to be right, which is where they mislabel it. And it's not even arguing, it's discussing, debating, because that's my brain. And it's awesome when you find people that are in the same category, because you have these great discussions. But I've learned, I've had to be aware that that's really not the majority of people, and to tone it down a little bit and recognize how it might come off that way. But the big distinction and disagreement I have is calling it having to be right. I don't. If I'm wrong, okay. Because what I'm looking for is what's right, and I'm trying to pull something apart to figure out where are the truths, or what are the ideas. And if somebody can challenge that, and I see it's different, I have no problem switching. I don't have any problem acknowledging I'm wrong. I'm interested, I'm curious, I'm looking for what the truth is, whatever that might be. That's its own whole word, but somehow this all relates in my head to the current situation. And so even talking about this now, I've come a couple degrees calmer. And how did I do that? I was in a full-blown physiological reaction of my own. I've got my own histories, which this person doesn't acknowledge. It creates their own challenges. And there's the physiological part, and working on the breathing, longer exhale than inhale, some of the physiological tricks to sort of resetting your nervous system. And one thing that's fascinating to me is often when I start those, there's this wave of even more anxious, and I would often back away from that until I started to learn to roll with emotions a little more through meditation and mindfulness. And I think it's more that you're opening the dam, that it's there, it's just you're trying to pent it up, but by letting it flow, it's sort of there's a bunch of it that spills out, but then it equilibrizes a little bit, and the levels up here, but it's not the same torrent. And learning to accept and watch it and know. I heard a really great analogy today that it's like knowing whether you're dreaming. If you don't know you're dreaming, you're sort of sucked into that and doomed to the reality of the dream, because you don't have the perspective that, oh, it's a dream. And it's the same with emotions. You can get caught up in them, and they become your reality, and you identify with those, and they're just a passing thought. Some people go so far as to say it's just a biological, neurological reaction. There's no reality to it. It's our real experience. It's not to diminish that, but we all know, no matter how mad or happy or whatever we are, at some point that shifts. These are transitory things, and letting emotions come and go through, one, it'll change, and two, you're not bottling up. So because you bottle up, you just start stacking a lot of issues, which I think we all acknowledge and have lived. And that's, so here I am living this mindfulness of working my way through, and a lot of pausing. There's that space. That's one of the biggest things I found to gain in this path, is that little bit of space between the action and your reaction, so it's more of a response, even if it's half a breath. I was so tempted to shoot this text back that I even started to write and then deleted it, and there's other things that I didn't write. But then the next trick is, letting them get out of my head, which I've not completely got there yet. But there's a Buddhist concept of right speaking, and it's, whether it's an okay thing to say? And then even if it is an okay thing to say, will it serve a purpose? And I am minded of a lot of recent conversations about, with certain people or certain circumstances, is there really anything to gain? You may feel better, and maybe that's enough, but to really stop and contemplate that before you act on it. Will I feel better in a real way, or just an immediate release of something that actually then you get sucked into something a lot worse? And it's like the being mad, taking poison, and thinking someone else is going to die. You're freeing yourself. It's not just letting them off the hook, or not calling them on their bullshit, or again, maybe that's legit, call them on their bullshit whether it matters or not, because it's the right thing to do, but make it a decision and not a reaction. And then the final sort of step down in this is, I was listening to a podcast on mindfulness, and it was a particularly good one with the guy Sam Harris, and just that outside voice sort of becomes another little anchor. And like now I'm going to call a friend and work some through it, but it's not going to be just this vomit of frustration. It can be a little bit more of a thoughtful, gosh, what do I do with this? And maybe I won't. Maybe I don't need to dump all this on somebody else, because am I going to come out with something that's helpful? I'll think about that for the next few minutes, and we'll see. But I thought, well, what the heck? Maybe this is a good day one, because it's not this nice, easy light. This is like real life. And you can see I'm talking pretty calmly, and that's a result of being able to pause and just kind of work it through. And I have found it's really hard. It's like working through pain. If somebody's having to do something to you that hurts, resisting it just makes it worse, and letting it happen feels worse in the moment, but then it all just flows through, and then it's done. And a little bit what this is like. And I feel like there's a whole lot more to say, and I may not be in the best frame of mind. I'm hoping some of this makes sense. It may help people when they're faced with something like that. It's not the day. I have all kinds of shit happening, and I did not need this. And I'm trying to reset my brain, because I'm leaving on a cruise Saturday to escape and write, and start creating this path I've wanted to for myself. And it's really hard already to say that and be like not apologetic for it. It's like, yes, that's a very privileged thing to be able to do. And it feels selfish and all kinds of things, but God damn it, it's healthy, it's good. And so there's all kinds of, and then thinking about packing and thinking about working, and my poor dad who's still recovering, and figuring out caregivers, figuring out his financial stuff that we all have multiple layers to our lives at any given moment. Mine is particularly intense this second. The last thing I want to deal with, and it's actually kind of funny how I think driving my partner slightly nuts, and I'm like, man, I feel so bad for her, because what a tortured place she must be coming from. He's like, what? It's not your fault. I know, but that's another, it's true, right? I mean, we're all human, we're all in this together, we're all trying to walk each other home, and all you can do is take care of yourself and be aware of what's in the moment. Oh, the one thing I did want to mention on the drive home I thought was kind of interesting is, when my brain starts thinking, oh, I could say this, or I could say that, or that's wrong because all of a sudden I'm a little bit down the road and I haven't seen anything. We do that all the time, right? And by stopping and looking, oh, here's this car that's passing, look at that tree, oh, there's some flowers, look for something blue, look for whatever it is that brings you to your moment. Your brain shifts to that, right? It's like, try not to think about the elephant in the room. You're going to think about it, but if you replace it with a different thought, then you might have some success. And that's a mindfulness trick, and getting in the moment. And it also helps you reclaim your brain a little bit. It's going to keep working, but you can start giving it some different directions. And so I hope that helps. And thank you for listening. And we'll talk again. Day one, again, reprise. We're going to start over. Talk to you soon.